Hi everyone and welcome to part 4 of this 5-part series where I'm looking at the World Championship draws for 2026, giving you my thoughts as well as some predictions too, which I absolutely hate doing, I'm not going to lie. They're so difficult and for me this is this is definitely the time I've looked into things a little bit more than usual, like head-to-heads, and really dug into some of the players, and the more you do that, the harder it is. Ignorance is bliss, guys. If you just go, oh, I think they've done well, and I really like them as a player, yes, I'll pick them. Yes, they won the last tournament, I will pick them. Yes, they're defending champions, I will pick them. It's whatever it may be, it's easier if you just look at it very, very surface level. The more you look into things, the harder it becomes. But I have done it nonetheless. Yeah. Anyway, this episode is the women's singles. And as always, the format is that I will look through each quarter. Top quarter, second quarter, third quarter, bottom quarter. After each quarter, where I'll look at, a lot of the players in it, potential good matches, etc. I'll give my prediction. I'll then summarize at the end. And I did remember to do it in the men's doubles yesterday. I had forgotten in the mixed doubles and women's doubles, but I will include a dark horse or two potentially. But anyway, women's singles. Let's go. Top quarter. Obviously, right at the top of the draw, we have the number 1 seed from Korea, An-si-young. And the big question is, can anyone stop her? But the other question that is on the lips of most people is, will An-si-young be fully fit? I have seen some reports that say that she is at about 90%. She is in full training. And the reason this has come about is that she played her first round against Hina Akechi at the Japan Open, won very comfortably, but then withdrew, citing an injury to her left foot. And then she subsequently pulled out of the China Open as well. But we've seen An-si-young win major tournaments injured before. But I guess we'll just have to wait and see on her fitness status. I still think even if she's at 90%, she's going to be incredibly difficult to beat. And I do think if she is in good form, or even slight down form, then I'd say she's in the better half for her personally, as she will avoid Chen Yufei and Akane Yamaguchi, who I think currently are slightly more difficult matchups for her. She'll be quite glad that those two women are in the opposite half. Now, there isn't really anyone that she doesn't have a good head-to-head with. We can say that about pretty much most players. But I am excited by her first round, where she plays the young and talented Keolana Naubantova, the 20-year-old world rank 39 from Bulgaria. She's a very exciting prospect. She's potentially seen as the future of European women's singles. She beat Ratchanuk Intanon at the Uber Cup, and she actually faced An-si-young in the group stages of the Paris Olympics. I'm also quite interested talking about young players. I'm actually looking at a player just below Naubantova in the draw, and that is the 19-year-old Thalita Wirawan of Indonesia. She went undefeated at the Uber Cup. Very talented young player. Tough draw, but what an experience if she can face An-si-young at the World Championships. Rounding out the top section of this quarter, we see the return of Mia Blichfeld. She still managed to get herself a seeding spot, squeaking in at number 16. She's had an injury-riddled 2026. She hasn't played since the Uber Cup, and even at that Uber Cup, she didn't play as many matches as she should have because she wasn't fully fit. I think we have to... Let's not forget with Mia, she has been quite vocal with the conditions at the India Open. They have spent a fair bit of money on the renovations, etc. So we'll have to wait and see what the conditions are like. But obviously, Mia Blichfeld was one that was quite vocal. And I think even in some of the press, they were mixing up her with Anna Anderson as well. So it'd be quite interesting to see that her first tournament back is at a tournament that she hasn't had the best of times with. It's a difficult section for Mia, not just because she's in the half or the top part of a quarterfinal with An-si-young, but also her potential second round opponent, which is either Ye Zhaomin or Supanida Katathong, two very dangerous unseeded players. Those two actually, I think, one of the potentially most exciting matches early in the first round. Ye Zhaomin versus Supanida Katathong. Ye Zhaomin leads 3-2 in their head-to-head with her winning the only match in 2026, which was at the Australian Open. An interesting battle. I think, but in all honesty, no one in this little section, I think, can challenge a fit or even a semi-fit An Seong. I think the next section down, which is still part of this top quarter, has an interesting first round, and that is Han Yue versus Kirsty Gilmore. Han Yue has never lost to Kirsty, never dropped a game, but they last played in 2024. Funnily enough, it was in India. So 2 years is quite a long time. And I think with Han Yue having a little bit of a rough time as of late, although she did have a pretty good match with Yamaguchi in the quarterfinals of the China Open. Kirsty has won the Europeans this year and is also a dangerous player, having taken Wang Ziyi to 3 in China. I think Han Yue is still the favourite, but this is a match I don't think any of us should sleep on. I think talking of players you can't sleep on, Kim Ga-eun is floating in that quarter, and with back-to-back quarterfinals in Japan and China, she'll likely have some confidence. Also, we know that she's capable of crazy performances. Let's not forget her win over Chen Yufei at the Uber Cup. I'm a little surprised that she actually missed the Korea Masters, but I think that means that clearly she is focused on the World Championships, and maybe she's being held back to train alongside An Seong. I think prediction-wise, really An Seong. I think this is a no-brainer. No one in this section, I think, poses a huge threat. Han Yue at her absolute best, but there's no reason to think that she is at that level at the moment. Second quarter. It's an interesting one. Hard to truly predict who will come out of this one. And that's even considering we've got the number 3 seed, Wang Ziyi, and a player who, up until recently, was the world number 2 and clear world number 2. Seeded, talking of Wang Ziyi, she's the highest seed in that section, 3rd seed. But over the past few months, she has seen a slight dip. She looked vulnerable with the Uber Cup, a possible pressure situation, and since then hasn't really shone. She did seem to be carrying a bit of a back injury in Singapore and Indonesia, something which did look cleared up in Japan and China, but at those tournaments it was obvious to me that she wasn't 100% fit. I mean, that 21-4 in the third to Wadani, I think, kind of summarises that perfectly. And even in the semi-final of China Open against Yamaguchi, which I think was a good result for her to get to the semi-finals, I think physical played a toll. But it is another month of training, so if she was injury-free, she finished China Open injury-free, and it has another month of training, and she will be difficult to beat if she is at or feeling near to 100% fitness. The big question mark for me over Wang Ziyi, more so than possibly her fitness, is her mental side, especially at these major championships. Last year she lost to Sindhu, and once again Sindhu is actually in her quarter section of the draw. I think something that adds even more pressure to this is considering that Sindhu is on home soil and will be coming in on hot form, having won the Japan Open. But sticking with Wang Ziyi for a little bit longer, she doesn't have it easy from the word go. She has Zhang Beiwen from America, who is an incredibly experienced player, and even Let's Hana has the game, I think, to trouble Wang Ziyi. But moving to the bottom bit, actually no, sorry, not the bottom bit. Sticking with this top section of the second quarter, we do have PV Sindhu. She is the number 9 seed. Can she have another great major run, this time at home? I'm sure she'd absolutely love that, and so would the fans. It would mean if she can get amongst the medals, it would be a 6th world medal. That would be absolutely incredible. Quite the achievement, and I think she has put herself in the best possible position to do so. She won the Japan Open, which was her first win at that level since becoming world champion in 2019. And she should probably have had a deep run at the China Open too, but she squandered match points versus Chen Yufei in the second round. But regardless, she has definitely found something and has continued to build on it. I noticed she had found something in Indonesia and Singapore, where she had, I think she played An Seong both those weeks and had good matches. She certainly felt she had chances. She then came into Japan and China even stronger, even better, having built on even more. And if she can continue that trend upwards, she's going to be very difficult to beat. We don't know the conditions, but it will likely be a fast one end, and I think Sindhu can make herself difficult with her height and blistering attack. Sindhu has lost the last 3 to Wang Ziyi all this year, but let's not forget, Sindhu did beat her at the Worlds last year, and Sindhu is in far better form. I think the last time they played possibly was the Uber Cup, and if we compare Sindhu to then, it's night and day. But if Sindhu wishes to get in the medals, if she's able to get through that section and defeat Wang Ziyi or whoever comes through, she would also have to likely beat Indonesia's medal hopes in the form of Putri Kusumawardani, the number 6 seed. Wardani was the player to beat Sindhu last year in the quarterfinals, and they could face at that stage again. Wardani may have some big confidence having beaten Wang Ziyi in Japan. That was her first win over a top 5 player ever in her career after like 35 times trying. But Sindhu did beat Wardani in Singapore, which was their last meeting, which wasn't too long ago. If those two do face, if it is Sindhu versus Wardani, their overall head-to-head is also 3-all, so I think it could be very fiery. I'd be inclined to favour Sindhu if it is that match, just because of recent form and overall level, plus at home she will be very, very difficult to beat. Some players, I think, do struggle on home soil. I feel Sindhu has proven she can raise her game there. I can recall one particular final against Carolina Marin, not long after the, I think it was the 2016 India Open, where Sindhu defeated her in a repeat of their Olympic final, just showing what she's capable of on home soil. I know that was 10 years ago, but it just shows that she can deliver on home soil. The only thing, I guess, against Sindhu is they faced each other 3 times in major tournaments, the Asian Games, the Sudirman Cup, and last year's Worlds. And Wardani is 2-1 up when it comes to that head-to-head. So I think rounding out this nice little section, I'm quite curious on Lena Christopherson as well, another seed, the 15th seed, and even Juliana Viana Vieira of Brazil. Lena recently went back-to-back finals in US and Canada, winning one of them. And Juliana is a former Pan Am champion and has a good game. They could potentially meet each other quite early, and that could be quite interesting. In fact, Lena is definitely someone that we shouldn't overlook. Prediction-wise, I've actually gone with PV Sindhu. It's difficult to predict, but with home court advantage, her momentum coming in, how she has built in her last few tournaments, the fact she beat Wang Ziyi at the Worlds last year leads me to lean more towards her. She's also a great player at the World Championships, 5 world medals before, and been in 1 silver, and I think, was it 1 gold, 1 silver, and 3 bronze? Absolutely incredible. Yes, Wardani beat her last year, and yes, Wardani has built some momentum, but I think Sindhu has shown a much more consistent overall game and is in much better shape, is a much higher level in comparison to last year. For me, the last I'll say of Wang Ziyi, she has got her fitness up. Of course, she's going to be tricky, but I think psychologically she will not like this draw all too much with 2 players who not just beat her recently, but one recently heavily and the other at the Worlds last year. Moving on, top of the bottom half, so the third quarter. I think most people will be quite excited, I'm certainly in this boat, at a potential match between 2 former world champions in Nozomi Okuhara, the 11th seed from Japan, and Ratchnuk Intanon, the 7th seed from Thailand. It would be their 22nd meeting, with Okuhara actually winning their only meeting early this year, although I believe Ratchnuk's knee was starting to show signs of injury back then because it was at the Indonesia Masters. But both these players have women from Turkey who simply can't be overlooked. Okuhara has an opening round against Özgür Bayrak, and Ratchnuk Intanon has an opening match against Neslihan AREN. These two are great fighters, and they will certainly make life very, very difficult. For me, Özgür Bayrak actually plays quite similar in a way to Okuhara. She's short, very strong, powerful mover, nice skills, and retrieves well. Could be quite an interesting battle. AREN is a tall player who makes good use of her height and angles. She beat Tomoka Miyazaki at the Uber Cup earlier this year. I think both these matches will be first encounters for all 4 players. And whilst obviously the seeds, I think Okuhara and Ratchnuk are the favourites, I don't think anyone should snub the players from Turkey. And if we get one upset out of that, I actually wouldn't be crazy surprised. I think what adds to that, what would lessen my surprise as well, is that both Ratchnuk and Okuhara do have some injury concerns. Okuhara withdrew from the Japan quarterfinal against PV Sindhu. Although I think possibly that was illness, not an injury. And obviously, Ratchnok Intanon has been bothered by her knee for quite some time. It flared up, like I mentioned earlier, at the Indonesian Masters, and it's been a bit of a battle to kind of keep on top. We've seen some moments where she's played really good, and then sometimes it flares up. So maybe this opens the door up for some of the other players. Like I said, the two Turkey players, but possibly even right at the top of the section, Lin Xiang Ti. Looking at the lower section, so the bottom part, it is quite hard to look past the two seeds in all honesty, and that is the 10th seed Pompoi Chochuang and the number 4 seed last year's runner-up Chen Yufei from China. Both of these two women have buckets of experience, and both are several levels above their respective opponents. Chen Yufei has struggled with injuries this year. She's had numerous ones and has battled to refine form at numerous occasions throughout the year. Recently, it was a hamstring injury that meant she retired versus Sindhu in Japan, but she was able to then get revenge over Sindhu the following week and reach the final of China. And I think a positive thing for her is that although eventually I did think the final she didn't quite have the legs against Yamaguchi, after losing the opening game against Ratchnok, I think in the quarterfinals, it was from that point where she started to look stronger and stronger and seemed to keep going and really, really improve. The match potentially between those two, Cho Chuang hasn't beaten Chen Yufei since 2018 and actually hasn't won a game since the World Championships in 2022. So it's looking pretty good for Chen Yufei to come through that little bottom bit. But overall, looking at that quarter, prediction-wise, I have gone for Chen Yufei. She has all the advantages in the head-to-head, recent results, etc. And while she may have a slight injury and might not be fully fit, all the other seeds in that section are in a similar boat. Ratchnok will be difficult. She is a little unknown and seems like it depends on her body on the day. Like I said, one day her knee can be great, one day it can be a little bit crappy. But Chen Yufei, for me, is a solid choice. I wonder if Chen Yufei will be extra motivated to go one better than last year. Last year she was incredibly unfortunate. She beat An Seong, but en route to beating her, she rolled her ankle so badly that she played the next day on painkillers, but really couldn't play anywhere near her best. Quite disappointing because the way that she was playing, she certainly was looking pretty good for her first World Championship title. And now the bottom quarter. It's an interesting top little section. You have the seeds in there, Michelle Lee and Tomoka Miyazaki, but you also have Unati Huda in there, who recently reached the semi-finals in Chinese Taipei Open and will have obviously the home support. It'll be interesting to see how the youngster handles this whole situation. I think for Unati, and the reason I say that is actually it's a good opportunity to do well. There was never going to be an easy section for her, but I see this section as possibly one of the best. Michelle Lee is good, but there are certainly chances for Unati, especially with her recent improvements. Tomoka is very tough. Unati has never won a game of her. I do think Tomoka looks to be getting over the natural slump after a breakthrough. Tomoka kind of had a really good breakthrough, 2 years ago? Or last year? I can't quite remember. And I think naturally, if sometimes players have that, they then have a natural dip as, players figure them out, take them more seriously, etc. And I think that she had a few other things with coach changes. I think Tomoka's on the way back up out of that, based on what I've seen recently. But this is a World Championships, so there's big pressure. So maybe there's a chance for Unati. Tomoka might also see this as a chance herself, and actually could find that difficult. It's going to be all handling pressure. And maybe that opens the door slightly for Michelle Lee, who's got a little bit more experience, and that might actually play to her advantage. I also can't overlook Chinese Taipei's Chu Pian Chan. She has beaten Ratchnok this year, reached the quarterfinals of the Indonesia Open, and has a solid game. Certainly on a day, she can be very tricky for anyone in that little top section. As for the bottom section here, three-time world champion and my personal favourite player, Akane Yamaguchi, is going to be very hard to beat. She's had an absolute crazy level of consistency as of late, reaching the final in her last 6 tournaments. Also, the seed in her section, Simu Jin, Yamaguchi has never lost to her. Yamaguchi has also never lost to Michelle Lee, and only lost once to Tomoka but won the last 2 in straight games. So predictions, I think it's pretty obvious for me. I'm going to go with Akane Yamaguchi. She is on, for me, on for a record-breaking 4th world title. She'll definitely be one of the favourites for it. I think she'll be quite happy that Sindhu is in the other half. Obviously, she's always going to be in the different half to An Seong, which is a big plus. Chen Yufei is the seed, and I think she'll be quite happy that it's her, not Wang Ziyi. Just, I don't know. I feel like just the fact that she's played Chen Yufei so many times, she probably just feels a little bit more comfortable. So I think it's a nice route to the semis with no real speed bumps. And I think also that means that she should get, when she gets to the semis, or she should get to the semis, she'll have a lot more energy, which is something that she's going to need. Because if I look a little further ahead at a potential final, I'm not saying, of course I'm not saying this is the final, but Yamaguchi has lost some finals to An Seong. And for me, Yamaguchi needs to be able to play fast enough, and that is her game anyway these days, but she needs to be confident that she can sustain that. When I've seen her against An Seong, the clear tactic of An Seong is let's try and match Yamaguchi's speed. If I can match Yamaguchi's speed and make life very difficult, Yamaguchi, it tends to come across that she's like, how am I going to win my points? And we start to see her go closer to the lines, which usually leads to mistakes. So I think if Yamaguchi can get to those latter rounds, get to the semis, or even get to the final, without it being lots of 3-game matches, she should have a little bit more energy, which might give her a little more confidence, depending. And I think even if it's my other pick in that half, Sindhu coming through that, I think it's the same, because Sindhu's got that reach, that power, that height that Yamaguchi, she didn't have the energy at all in Japan to be able to handle that for 3 games. But if she has the energy to have it in the Worlds, I think that also gives her a good chance. So, I think it's a pretty nice draw for Akane Yamaguchi. So that's it in terms of my selections for the women's singles. Let me quickly wrap them up. Top quarter, An Seong. Then I've gone for PV Sindhu. Next section I've gone for Chen Yufei, and rounding out is Akane Yamaguchi. As for a dark horse, okay. There aren't many that are not seeded that I think can do really well. I think I have to include some lower seeds in this. Do you know what? I'm going to go with Lena Christopherson. She's the 15th seed, so I think it just about counts. I think she got a bit of confidence from her exploits in America and Canada. I think she's in not a little bad section of the draw. She's definitely beaten Mordani before, had good games. It'd be very difficult because, I think anyone who's outside the top 4 or in sections, you're going to come across someone absolutely incredible before you get to the medals. But I think where she's positioned, if she can get herself into the quarters, who knows? But yeah, no, I'll go with Lena Christopherson, but it is very, very difficult. So that wraps it up, guys, for episode 4 or part 4 of this 5-part series looking at the World Championship draws. Just one more to go tomorrow, which is the men's singles, the final one. Hope you enjoyed watching. Obviously, as always, let me know your thoughts on my predictions, add any further context, etc. that you think I've missed. And yeah, I will see you tomorrow, unless you're watching these late, of course, for the final episode, which will be the men's singles. Until then, everyone, see you tomorrow.